Now we are going to discuss another important concept in probability, which is known as the critical probability. And this concept is very critical in inferential statistics, right? So you need to learn this concept very carefully. And this critical probability is the probability below which the stated outcome of an event is unlikely to occur, right? And this is decided arbitrarily. That is, there is no mathematical basis, or there is no statistical basis on which level we need to decide below which we are going to say that this is a critical probability, or above which we can say that this is not a critical probability. So this has been decided arbitrarily by researchers all over the world. And now we are going to discuss that what is meant by this critical probability. So we are going to take the example of Dixella species that we took in the previous lecture. And suppose that a sample of female Dixella attica is required for a museum, perhaps, right? So how this sample could be collected, because it is hard to catch the flying insects. So therefore, the best strategy is to collect pupa, and when the fly emerges out of that pupa, then that fly could be captured and it could be preserved for the museum, right? Or for any kind of the research that you want. So for that purpose, the entomologist is going to visit the pond to collect the pupa. Now, what would be the response of entomologist if, in the first scenario, the first pupa to emerge is a female Dixella attica, right? So what we are talking about is that a sample of the female Dixella attica is required, and for that purpose, an entomologist is going to visit the pond, and the entomologist has collected some pupae. Now, we are talking about the response of the entomologist, that what is going to be the response of entomologist if the first pupa that emerges out to be a fly, so that pupa emerges out as female Dixella attica. And then the second situation is that what would be the response of entomologist if the first two pupae are going to emerge as female Dixella attica, and what is going to be the response of entomologists if the first three pupae are going to be female Dixella attica, right? Now, this is the point of concern. Why? Because for that purpose, we need to talk about their probabilities. So the probability for the first case is 0.1. As we discussed in the compound probability, that what is the probability of female Dixella attica? This is 0.5 for female multiplied by 0.2 for Dixella attica. So their compound probability is 0.1. So probability in first scenario is 0.1, right? Which is surprising or no? Which is not that surprising. And we need to calculate the probability of the second possibility, that the first two pupae to emerge are female Dixella attica. So in this case, we are going to multiply their probabilities because we are talking about two consecutive events. So their compound probability is 0.01. And what is the probability of the first three pupae to emerge as female Dixella attica? So this probability is 0.1 multiplied by 0.1 multiplied by 0.1, because we are talking about three consecutive events. So this probability is 0.001, right? So what is the response of entomologist going to be for the first case? It is going to be quite normal, because the chances for this to occur are 10 in 100, right? So 0.1 means 10 in 100. So this is quite likely to occur. But chances for the second case are 1 in 100, right? So 1 in 100 means that this is quite rare thing. So entomologists would be surprised that this is something which was unlikely to occur, but this thing has occurred anyhow. And when the entomologist is going to see that the third pupae is also emerging as female Dixella attica, so this is going to be shocking for the entomologist, because the chances for this thing to happen are only 1 in 1,000. The probability is 0.001. So this is going to be something really shocking, right? So here we have the concept of critical probability, that we have to decide a level below which we say that if something which has a probability less than this is going to happen, then this is said to be a critical probability. So we have to decide some level of critical probability below which we can say that this event is unlikely to occur. Because remember that what is the range of the probability? What is the total scale? The scale is from 0 to 1. So the closer we are to 0, the impossibility is increasing, and closer we are to 1, the possibilities are increasing, right? So the probability is decreasing as we move towards 0, and the probability increases as we move towards 1. But there should be a point on this scale where we should decide that if the probability falls below this level, then this probability should be considered as critical, right? Because 0, if we have exactly 0, that is impossible, right? So that is straight away impossible. But when we say that as we move closer to 0, it is going to become rare, right? Its probability is going to decrease. So we should decide a point, a threshold, which we can designate as the critical probability, that if the probability drops below this point towards 0, this is going to be something critical, right? So this is the concept of critical probability. Like in this example, you saw in the first scenario, the chances are 10 in 100, so this is not surprising at all. But when we go to the second chance, this is 1 in 100, which is quite surprising. And the third case is 1 in 1,000, which is even more surprising, right? So this is the concept of critical probability that we are talking about here. So here we have the critical probability values, the thresholds that we were talking about, that we should set a threshold. And if the probability of something, a probability of an event falls below that threshold, then we can say that this is a critical probability, right? So here we have these threshold values, and these values have been decided arbitrarily by researchers all over the world, right? So the first level is probability of 0.05. So if the probability of something is less than 0.05, then that event or that outcome is known to be an unlikely event, right? So that outcome is going to be unlikely if the probability is less than 0.05. And if that outcome happens, then we are going to say that this is something significant. And why we're saying that this is something significant? Because the probability was very less. But even if that less probability, this event has occurred, then we are going to say that this is a significant event, right? Then we have our next level of critical probability, and this level is 0.01. So if the probability is less than 0.01, then we are going to say that that outcome is very unlikely to occur. So this is one grade up, right? That we are talking about a probability which is even lower than 0.05. So we are going to say that this event is very unlikely to occur. And if this event occurs, this is going to be highly significant, right? And then we have the next level of critical probability, next threshold level, that if the probability is less than 0.001, then that outcome is said to be highly unlikely, right? And if that outcome occurs, this is said to be very highly significant, right? So why we are saying very highly significant, why we are emphasizing on this significant word so much? Because the probability of that thing to occur was very critical. It was highly unlikely. And even then that event occurs, then we are going to say that this is a very highly significant event, right? So all the probabilities which are above 0.05, they are said to be likely, the outcome is said to be likely, and if that event occurs, this is said to be a non-significant event because its probability was higher, so it was expected to occur. So this is the threshold, this is the critical probability that we use in statistics, that if the probability of something, of some experiment, it falls, or some observation, it falls below 0.05, we are going to say that this is unlikely to occur. And then we have different stages of this unlikeliness, that the initial stage is unlikely. The next stage, if it is less than 0.01, it is very unlikely. And the next stage, if it is less than 0.001, it is highly unlikely. But if that event occurs, we say that this is significant, or it is highly significant, or it is very highly significant. So these are the levels of critical probability used in statistics.